We have had quite the meal today, right? I don't know what your favorite starter would be. I'm assuming it's the same as me, a nice haggis. We've had the steak for main course, or cauliflower steak, if that's your thing. We're about to have the pudding of all puddings. We're about to have the hot chocolate fudge cake. And James Poulter is, you've never been called a hot chocolate fudge cake before in an introduction, but James Poulter is the head of head of innovation and AI for House 337. He's also worked for Lego. He's started and sold business, and he's just an incredible entrepreneur, an incredible thinker. But he's also, I have to say, one of the most inspiring people I've seen working in both the secular and the faith world when it comes to this space of AI. And I just think he's just such a gift to the church and a gift to us. So, well, please welcome JP to the stage.
I'm going to leave the hot chocolate fudge cake to one side. Romans 8:31 says, "What then shall we say in response to these things?" Going last makes that quite difficult. I've had a lot of jobs over the years. The first job that I ever had was working in a dry cleaners in southwest London. Big up the Walton upon Thames, massive. Anyone from down that way? Give me a wave, yeah, if you kind of know where I'm talking about. It's a lovely place. It has a Waitrose. That's all you need to know. I got to work for this dry cleaner down there, a lovely chap called Michael who ran this place. I'm not sure how genuine he was, but he told us that we had two very famous clients. One of them was Sir Cliff Richard. We regularly washed Sir Cliff's suits. For those of you who are not from the UK, you'll be like, who was that? For some of you, you've still got the calendars in the archive on the wall somewhere. Yeah, I know, Mark, yeah. No. And beyond that, we also had Kate Winslet was one of our clients as well. We often would wash the suits that she had for the BAFTAs. Now, I never saw Sir Cliff or Kate, or actually anyone related to any of these clothes come and go through the doors of the dry cleaners, but he assured me for absolute certainty that they were clients. It does make you wonder kind of how he made these stories up. That was my first job. My second job was doing this, which was running boxes of paper up and down Fleet Street here in the City of London for my father's law firm. How many people use at work something like Box or Google Drive or Dropbox at the moment? Yeah. Well, this was the 1995 equivalent of that, which was basically moving papers up and down up on a street. You can still see them today from time to time, these clerks rushing things to the Royal Courts of Justice or the Old Bailey wrapped in these pink ribbons. Technology and jobs, it's come an awful long way, and I think it's actually probably getting a little bit out of hand. I did a recent look at LinkedIn to see what types of job titles people have. These are all real ones. You could be the creator of happiness, the accounting ninja. Actually, I've seen Gareth actually has that outfit. And I personally prefer the change chatter. I love that hat. These are all real job titles that people have put, at least on their LinkedIn profiles. Whether or not it's actually on their contracts is another thing. Work itself has gotten a little bit out of hand. We have found more ways in the past 3 decades to fractionalize the work that we do into smaller and smaller compartments of expertise than we've ever seen in human history. Just one company that I found whilst doing this research was hiring for all of these different roles into one company. All variations and flavors on the theme of essentially an engineer, someone working in kind of technology. You've got data scientists, you've got front-end engineers, back-end engineers, full-stack engineers, machine learning engineers, all sorts of different things. It's actually statistically true that there are more jobs than ever before. Since around about the 2000s, when we started putting computers on our desks and we spent more time behind those desks doing most of our work, there's been an explosion of roles. This data from Harvard tracks that the average number of jobs in Fortune 500 companies has exploded by over a third in that time period. And there's been a lot of things that have driven this change, this fractionalization of work. One is that the work that we we do has become more technically complex, and therefore it's impossible for all of us to retain the knowledge of all the different things that we interact with. It's estimated that the average marketeer these days interacts with 250 different pieces of software to get their job done, just in one company, one role alone. So the tech has got more complex. The second thing is that we've tried to become more efficient, and so we know that by specializing and niching down, giving one person fewer things to do and focus on, they become hopefully more efficient in doing it. And with that, they also get a deeper knowledge. Now that also then creates what I think is often known as the Oracle problem, which is that everyone knows that one guy in the company who knows everything about that one thing, and then suddenly he's no longer there, and the knowledge also walks out the door with him, sadly, which then leads to the final problem, which is the challenge of scaling, is that we want to be bigger, more global. We've heard earlier today about the pursuit of growth as one of the kind of modus operandis of modern companies. And these four forces have driven this fractionalization of work. And then we arrive here in 2025 and in this moment of artificial intelligence. And I think if I was to try and frame where we are today, I think there is a real tension between two simultaneous states of being when it comes to AI, and they are these. One is FOMO. We all know what FOMO is, yeah? The fear of missing out, yeah, good. The fear of missing out. This seems to have been the state of slight moral panic, spasm of excitement that's happened in the C-suite over the past couple of years in the companies that I tend to spend a lot of time with, which is that we must do AI, right? And you may even have people in the businesses that you work for or the ministries that you're a part of are saying, we've got to work out what to do about AI. We must do AI, as if AI is something to do, which is maybe a fallacy in itself, but we must do it. And so this kind of fear of missing out thing has crept into our organizations. But the second, I think, is also present with us, and I think has been captured quite well by the conversations we've had today, which is what I call the FIGO, or what I might call the fear of AI obsolescence. This kind of brewing pain, worry, AI anxiety that is bubbling within us, that maybe if I just get so good at doing this AI, the AI might be better at me than doing it myself, and I very well may end up not having anything to do at all. And I think we are trapped slightly in this tension of wanting the best of the efficiency and of the efficacy of these products, whilst also simultaneously scared that they're coming for everything we currently do. And as much as we love it in the church in particular to be kind of kind and thinking that kind of perpetually find things for people to do, we also are stewards of other people's money, often, particularly of those of you that are in ministries that have to do a lot of fundraising. And don't we? We have a stewardship ethic of also wanting to be efficient with what we do, because we want to be good managers of what God's resources are. And maybe, in some cases, that might mean a few less people doing it. And that's quite scary for us. So we're stuck in this tension. It's, of course, become really present to us as a direct result of the explosion of ChatGPT and AI, as we've heard, so many different tools. And I think what we need to understand is just how fast this change has happened to us, because it will explain to us why we're finding it difficult, perhaps, to reconcile. ChatGPT, a product with, kind of pretty much the worst brand name in all of marketing history, with zero marketing budget at the time of launch, just so you know, they were going to call it Chat 2 GPT 3.5, like that was better. So be blessed that ChatGPT was where they landed. It reached 100 million users in 2 months. We're now at over 500 million users. It's estimated probably nearer to 800 million, depending on whose stats you believe. We'll cross the billion mark by the end of the year. At a point when a seventh of the planet is already using one product in 2.5 years, that's faster adoption of technology than we've ever seen in all of human history. Go back through the social media era, the internet, the mobile phone, the desktop computer, the clock, and the horse. Like literally, we've never adopted anything so quickly. And we now find ourselves in this moment where not only is that pace of change carrying on at this speed, it's accelerating. And no wonder if you feel a slight technological whiplash every time you wake up in the morning to prompt ChatGPT for your breakfast cereal, you'll understand why. So where are we going? Well, if you listen to the oracles of our time, namely the Silicon Valley Five behind the big companies, the likes of Sam Altman behind OpenAI that creates ChatGPT, we should believe that in very short order, this technology will supersede where it is now to a state where it allows us to do things that previously, as Sam says here, used to take a month that we'll do in an hour. Just think for a moment about something you've been working on for a month. And imagine by the time that we all reach the pub, that's been done. What would you do next? The next thing on the list, of course, right? You move on to the next thing, that's great. Well, what if that then gets done in the next hour? For most of us, we haven't planned forwards over more than about a month. We'd run out in about 3 days of things to do. And of course, then this unlocks potential of we begin to not just do things faster, but maybe we do things better, or maybe we just begin to do the things that we never thought possible before. I mean, you've all got a list, right? The list of things that has been on that Eisenhower matrix of being important but not urgent. Do you do that in your little notebook sometimes? Draw that little diagram and kind of plot the things in the corners. That not urgent but important stuff, maybe that's the thing that begins to fill this gap. And then the question is, well, what if AI does that as well? OpenAI define our pursuit towards this artificial general intelligence, this point at which computers can basically do everything that humans can do, in 5 phases. And we believe we are currently living through the agentic phase, right? It used to be that in the assistant phase, we would have a conversation with an assistant, whether that's ChatGPT, Gemini, Alexa, Claude, Perplexity, Grok, or name your poison, and it would have a conversation with us, and then we would do the work, right? That was the dynamic. Now, we are in the point where we have a conversation with the thing, and it does the work, and very soon, we don't even need to have the conversation with the thing, because it moves into the point where these agents will be able to collaborate with one another to get the work done with almost no input from us, or certainly less input than us, and at the point where we may reach organizations that can just run themselves. It's been predicted by Peter Thiel and others that we are probably in the next 5 years going to see the first billion-dollar company that has a single employee. Now, I don't know that's particularly good for the world. It's great for whoever that guy is. But this seems to be the direction of travel. So how realistic is this? Well, I mean, of course, people like Sam Altman have a very heavily vested interest in us believing that that is the case. They've got about $10 billion worth of investment from Microsoft riding on it, and a stock price that is rising through the roof. But did you know that Sam Altman is also the CEO of another company? It's called World. Anyone heard of this company? You might have seen them over the past couple of weeks during the recent sporting fixtures. They had a kiosk down next to the TfL building in Victoria. The World company is the author of the World Coin. It's an altcoin, a cryptocurrency that is going to be issued to the owners of World Coin to issue universal basic income. Because when you have no other work to do, someone still has to pay you. And the World Coin has also got a product called the Orb. They've just released a new version of it. It's much smaller, and they can put it into more and more places, that will scan your retina and create a digital twin of your identity and issue you a non-government issued passport to issue you that cryptocurrency. Sam Altman is the CEO of 2 companies, OpenAI and World. Now, if I were a spread betting man, but I'm not. If I had one bet that AI was going to do the work of a human in a month, in an hour, I'd probably start a company that did the other stuff too. So whether or not we are to truly believe these 2 narratives, or they might just be great PR stories, I think it's well worth us considering just how realistic this might be. And the reason I think that these predictions are probably more realistic than they are science fiction is because there are people leaving these companies left, right, and center to whistleblow on this very prediction. This study, AI 2027, that was released back in April by Daniel Kokotalu and a number of other scholars, are ex-OpenAI researchers, those who have been inside and seen under the hood, probably will become GPT-5 at some point or other. And they too believe that somewhere around about the mid-2027 point, we will reach AI superintelligence takeoff. And the first version of that superintelligence will be an AI coder that can code itself. At the moment, humans code the AIs, and the AIs get better. At this point, the AIs code the AIs, and the AIs get better. Therefore, doing the AI programmers out of a job in the first place. They'll be the first ones to go. They should be the most worried. But this is kind of where we head. to the point which somewhere by the 2030s, we actually reach what we might know as this AI, artificial superintelligence, a point where AI can do basically everything that you can do on a computer and much more. Well, what happens when all of this begins to come to bear? One of the things that happens is that specialism kind of goes out the window. We're already beginning to see this, that in major fortune companies, we're beginning to see a collapsing back in of that fractionalization of work. Because realistically, why would you need an expert on a topic when AI is a way better expert on every topic? And what we actually, I think, are going to need are people that are much more, we used to talk about like T-shaped people, you've heard that phrase, like hiring people who've got a kind of nice depth of specialism, and they kind of like, are able to go much broader. I think we're going to do away from that. I think it's probably going to be a kind of hyphenated person, someone who can skip across a number of different skill sets and work laterally. Or perhaps if you were to turn it on its head, that they would, rather than do the front end and the back end, that they might, as I call them, do the full stack of work once again, rather than being an expert in just one fractional part of this. So we might find that there is actually more work for us as individuals to do. It's just the work we're doing is more broad and generalized than ever before. And then what we also might find is that the work that we choose to do as humans in concert with AI actually is of a higher order and of a better quality. Again, another study from Harvard here. Particularly, I would call out one of the authors of this, Ethan Mollick, who from Wharton, fantastic scholar. You should definitely read his book. It's well worth a read, Co-Intelligence. From this study, they found that individuals who had access to AI were able to perform as well as a team of 3 or 4 people who didn't have AI. So one person doing the same quality work as a team of 3 or 4 people, and then the teams that were given AI were able to perform at the top 10 percentile level of quality across all of the people that they studied. Meaning that, essentially, you're not just going to do more of the work more generally, but the quality of that work can be better. Okay, so this is good. And we're beginning to see this already in the first kind of wave of this agentic work. You'll know, if any of you have kind of done a little bit of image editing over the years, this is what Photoshop looked like just about 10 years ago. Kind of lots of buttons and widgets and dials. And fast forward to now, and essentially Canva will just do any of this stuff for you at one click. You just put things into an image. But of course, this isn't just doing the work that could have been done before faster. It's also doing it better. It's unlocking things that I could just never have done before, to the point which I can create all sorts of images that I just couldn't have done. I mean, many of you, I think, have created a animatronic version of yourself as an action figure in a little plastic box at some point on ChatGPT. If you haven't, it's great fun. But I certainly cannot animate as well as Pixar, Matt Groening, Aardman, or even do an infographic. And yet with this tooling, well, I can. So I can do things faster than I could before, and I can do things better than I could before, and I can also do things that I could never do before at all. This seems to be the future of what it means to work with AI. This has been, particularly when it comes to coding, which is one of the main domains where we've seen these agents be really capable in recent years, particularly since the invent of Claude 3.7 and a number of these desktop applications that many of us might have played around with. This new kind of way of working, with Andre, who's one of the founders of Anthropic, calls this vibe coding. You've heard this phrase before. Some of you have come across this. I think this broadens out more to vibe working in general, but the way he describes it in about the most Gen Z way of describing anything is that a new way of kind of vibe coding, which is where you fully give into the vibes and embrace the exponentials. It sounds lovely. So vibe coding maybe is the first frontier of this, but I think this vibe working goes further, because we are going from having to know real nuts and bolts, the details of the code, and we're going into a new zone. I've been able to build some apps myself since the start of the year. I'm not a developer. My only experience with coding was this, Yahoo GeoCities in the early 90s. Anyone build a GeoCities website in this room, just so I'm not alone? Thank you very much. That's good to know, brothers, that you're with me. It mostly seems to be the brothers, ladies, you had better things to do. So in these early phases, this is what you had to know enough kind of CSS and HTML to be dangerous. These days, these tools like Cursor, paired with some of these coding models, are allowing us to do things that we just could never do before. And so what I think that does is it unlocks a new type of focus for us as humans. In reality, a lot of the work that goes into what we do every day, and certainly in the ministry space, isn't ministry at all, it's administry. It's the busy work, it's the paperwork, it's the drudgery that we have to tread through in order to get to the gold on the other side. And I think this type of vibe working, and maybe I might coin the phrase of vibe ministry, is something we might have to take on. But the things that we are going to need to do that are the core skills that we've always valued as humans. We just need to get much, much better at codifying them. Because I actually think the central skill of the full stack worker is to be able to describe what the work is that you want done. Right? Let me just unpack why I mean that. Is that if you want an AI model to be very good at doing what you do, you need to be able to describe it in words and language. This is the skill set that we need to develop. And well, how can you be very good at describing the work that you do? Well, the first is you need to know how to lead something else in doing it. If you can't describe to a colleague how to do the work, good luck describing it to an AI model. You also have to have deep empathy for the work that you do, both for yourself and for your colleagues around you. In particular, because most of us, the way that we get our work done day to day actually isn't through describing it to anybody else. Most of it you do on autopilot. It's patterns and recognition, things you've picked up over time. In fact, you're probably unconscious to most of the work that you do most days. And so if I actually asked you to break it down and spell it out for me, you'd find it quite difficult. It's why timesheets are really, really annoying. Sorry, I've already upset Gareth once this week about that. You also have to be able to think strategically, because actually the reality is that working with AI in the future isn't working with one AI, it will be working with many, and therefore we have to be able to bring those things together in concert, both between humans and other AIs working together. And we have to become deeply culturally fluent, and I don't mean by that knowing what's on at the opera. I mean actually being fluent in the culture of your team, your organization, and crucially, the audiences and publics that you are trying to serve. And finally, this is where that skill really lands, which is, with all of this, we might be able to orchestrate these AIs, to see them more like a suite of instruments in an orchestra that we learn how to play and direct, rather than necessarily being able to compose on ourselves. They might do a lot of that composing. You will need to bring them together. Well, if this is the direction of travel, then what are some of the things we've got to watch out for? What are you going to have to deal with in the very near term? One is that we have to watch out for an emerging talent gap between those that will and those that will not. I'm sure you know people in your organizations, but it's probably not you because you came to this, that are the conscientious objector, right? As my friend Liz Oldfield kind of talks about, she is a kind of AI kind of agnostic. She doesn't want necessarily to commit to these kind of things. There will be people that want to do that. And I'm not to say that they are wrong in any moral sense, but they may be left behind. And I think we then have the moral responsibility to decide how to manage that. But that talent gap also will have some significant consequences for the youngest of us or those that are starting in their careers. How many of you in your first 5 years of work spent a lot of time doing essentially admin, right? For me, it was like data entry, social media monitoring and listening. I did a lot of that stuff. Kind of like I mentioned, ferrying the papers up and down Fleet Street, right? But you were doing something else in those first 5 years when you were given that kind of admin work. You weren't just given it because the bosses didn't want to do it. Okay, well, maybe. Maybe they did. But one of the things you were doing is that you were watching. You were learning by observation. You were taking in. You were essentially learning what it means to be a good human in the world at the same time as kind of taking care of some admin tasks because that was economically sensible. Well, in a very short order, most of those jobs are going to become uneconomically sensible, right? Like, just why would you pay someone to do that work? So then we have to think of a new model to bring people into these jobs. Because you can't get a mid-weight finance manager or HR manager or a mid-weight lawyer or consultant without having some junior ones around at some point or other. Like, they have to grow through something. And so we're going to have to think of new ways to grow people into the organization. And it might look uneconomically sensible, but it's human sensible. It's spiritually sensitive, because what we actually know is that in those early years, as we all start out, is that we're not just doing work that is formative, we are being formed at that time. And we need to give people opportunities to be formed. These AI-enabled observer roles, I think, are the things that we need to design into our organizations. What would it look like for you to, rather than give the dog's body work to the young person that's given up their time in your organization, or often maybe given their time, literally, you're not paying them often for that already, like maybe start paying them first, that would be a good start. But once they're in there, rather than giving them that work to do, what if you gave them real work to do with an AI partner that would help them do it in a safe space where they can't mess stuff up, but they can still learn? And that they can observe, and that they can be observed, and that they can grow in maturity. This is what we're being asked to do. If you would like to explore some of this thinking, I took that AI 2027 prediction earlier this year, and I fed it through Claude and asked it to kind of give me a Christian perspective of where this might go. What might some of the things that happen in the church go forward and grow? And if you would like to scan this little QR code, you can go download it. It's a free resource. I just found it interesting to do. And you can kind of dig into it. But I think that this is one of the primary missions that we have to consider as the church in this moment. Not just because we're employers, which we are, not just because we are pastoring and growing people, of course, which we are, but one of our callings and missions is to be workers in the field and to do good work. And without there being good work to do, we've got a real crisis on our hands. As Jordan Peterson often kind of points to, there's nothing more dangerous than a really upset young man with nothing to do. Like, it's a really dangerous thing in our society. We need to find great work for people to do and to keep working on. The reality is that the future is always kind of already here, isn't it? It's just unevenly distributed. We are privileged in this position to be sat here and thinking about this work. But the reality is that it's patchy. Ethan Mollick, who I mentioned before, in their study, they talk about the jagged frontier of AI, that it's kind of moving forward all the time, but in a rather kind of fractional, mountainous kind of way. There are peaks and troughs, there are valleys. And that's the challenge, I think, that is before us, friends. So in closing, I think it was wise to kind of come back to Romans and just to kind of give you a few encouragements, because I don't want this to sound negative. I really don't. I want this to be our opportunity and our challenge, because we as the church should have the best answer to these questions, right? We should have the best answer. Why? Well, because the creation is waiting in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. That's us. Why? Because some days we don't know what we ought to pray for, but the Spirit intercedes. Why? Because all things God uses and works for good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. And so what then shall we say in response to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for being here today. We appreciate you.